Hello everyone, welcome back to Knowledge India. In this particular video, we are going to talk about this particular question, that should you go ahead and use cloud providers' native services. So first of all, what are native services? What are some examples of those? So let's say in terms of AWS, if you are using AWS, some of the native services could be something like S3, which you can use for storage. Maybe you can use SQS for queues or SNS for notification, right? Something of these sort. So a very good way of recognizing that is it a really cloud native service could be that how do you go ahead and access that particular service. Now if you look at the way you access these services, like this one, it is via APIs, right? And when I say APIs, it is basically AWS APIs, right? So if you want to go ahead and let's say upload a file to S3 or download a file from S3, right? In the same way, if you want to go ahead and publish a message to an SQS queue, what do? You go ahead and use an AWS API call, and via that you are able to achieve that particular requirement. So what does that further mean? If you think about it, if you go ahead and start using these services as part of your architecture, as part of your application architecture, it would mean that you will be using AWS APIs as part of your application code. Now, many of the times people say that this leads to locking, right? That you are getting logged into a particular cloud provider, right? So for example, you will hear an argument that that people would say that instead of using, let's say, S3, or SQS, we can go ahead and use something which is independent of a particular cloud provider, right? So maybe instead of using SQS as your queue solution, go ahead and use some other queue solution, and just go ahead and basically deploy this queue solution onto your cloud, right? So what they're essentially saying is, go ahead and deploy a bunch of servers, right? Let's say 3 servers in 3 different availability zones, and go ahead and deploy this queue solution onto these servers, right? Yep, you can do that. But what is the challenge with this? The challenge with this particular thing is that you can do this, but the availability of these servers then becomes your responsibility, isn't it? Because ultimately what you are taking from AWS at this point is just EC2. What you're taking from them is just EC2, just nothing but VMs. So it becomes your responsibility that you have to ensure that these servers are up. You need to have some admin. Maybe you need to have an administrator for this, right? For this particular queue solution, you need to have an admin. So that admin will make sure that this particular software or this particular tool is installed on these servers and it is all maintained. Maybe necessary backups are done, maybe, or ensuring that if one particular server goes down, other one takes over and things like that. Now, yes, you can go ahead and of course argue that with other solutions, like let's say you can say we have got auto scaling group, right? ASG, auto scaling group. So yes, we will go ahead and use auto scaling group, and with the help of auto scaling group, we can manage that these servers remain up, and if any server goes down, it will be replaced by another server. Those things you can be argued, but the point is, you still need this additional manpower, isn't it? Also, when it comes to scaling at a really high level, or when you want to do extensive scaling, though auto scaling group helps you, but you still need to put in a considerable amount of thought process in tweaking or configuring it correctly. So either you go ahead and do all of that on your own, or a better approach would be that you go ahead and use something like SQS, which AWS is providing you, right? So basically the benefit is that you are not responsible for the availability of the service, right? So this is taken care of, right? So availability is taken care of. That is the good thing. Also, you don't have to worry about scalability of this service. So think about that, you are using S3, or let's say you are using SQS. You don't have to really worry about the fact that when you want to go ahead and just store a lot of files onto S3, you don't worry about going and scaling any servers at the back end or things like that, right? So that's a really good advantage for you, and your team is just spending time and energy in designing the application, and don't have to worry about the scalability part because it is taken care of. So that's another thing. So this example which I was taking here was to kind of showcase that when it comes to using services on cloud, it is just not about taking your workload and just hosting it on the cloud as it is, right? You will not be able to get all the benefits of cloud just by doing that. You will be able to get all the benefits only when you start using the cloud native services as part of your architecture, because as you go ahead and use different cloud native services as part of your application, you get many of the capabilities inbuilt as part of those services, right? So, and when we say that these capabilities are inbuilt as part of the services, it means the responsibility goes away from your plate, right? Now someone might argue that, hey, you're saying we go ahead and use SQS instead of hosting our own queue solution. What if AWS AWS is not doing their job correctly and SQS service goes down? Surely if that is happening, then that's a problem. So what you should do is you should go ahead and check the the record of SQS going down, that how many times has it happened in the past that SQS has gone down, and for how much time that outage was there. Go ahead and look at that data, and based on that you should decide whether you can trust this service or not. But instead of that, if you just say that no, we'll be just using our own queue solution and will not go ahead and use a cloud provided solution, that is not the correct argument. Okay, so coming back to this locking part, right? Let me address this as well briefly. So people say that because we do not want to use a particular cloud provided we don't want to use a cloud provided solution, because if we are using their APIs, then we'll be logged into that. I mean, it's a matter of fact that yes, if you have to change a particular component in your application architecture, it would lead to some amount of rewriting of your code, no doubt. So for example, if you are using SQS today and if you start using some other queue solution tomorrow, it would lead to rewriting certain parts of your code. Now as you modularize the code in your application, you can try and structure your code better, but I'm not saying that you will not have to change your code. But the point is that just because of this approximation that sometime in the future you might move away from one cloud provider to another, just because of that chance which you think that we might move away from one cloud provider to another, just because of that, should you actually stay away from using all the cloud provided services? Uh, answer answer would be no. Please don't do that. uh, try and look at try to go and look at do a study and see how many times has it really happened that you move a big application from one cloud provider to another. You don't do it a lot. Okay, I mean, in the industry also it doesn't happen a lot. I'm not trying to say that organizations are not using multi-cloud. Most of the big enterprises are multi-cloud today, which means they are using at least two major public cloud providers, right? But it does not mean that they just keep switching one workload from one cloud to the other cloud. They just don't keep doing that. Instead of that, they will have some sort of strategy. They'll have a strategy. They'll have a strategy, and as part of that strategy, they would decide that which type of workloads will go to first cloud provider, and which type of workloads will go to second cloud provider. They'll have that strategy defined. Okay, so based on that, it happens. So they might have 20 applications running on cloud 1 and another 30 applications running on cloud 2, and that is based on some decision which that company has taken, right? But it does not happen very frequently that today I'll host this particular application on AWS, and then tomorrow I'll just move it to Azure. I'm not saying it will not happen at all, but if you look at the chances when it happens, that is a lot less. I mean, it's not a lot, right? So understand from that point of view. So and even if that happens, right? Even if you move from one cloud to the other cloud, it's not that your data cannot be taken out. Whoever thinks that if you put something onto a particular cloud provider and then it gets logged, it's all wrong. You can always take your data out. Okay, whether it is in S3 or it is in a database, you can always dump your data out. It will take some effort, but yes, you can take it out. So it is important, to summarize what I want to say here is, it is important that you thoroughly think that which cloud you want to go with in the very start, and within that particular cloud provider, what all different offerings are there which you want to go ahead and use as part of your application architecture. But do not try to just stay away as a rule that we will never go ahead and use a cloud provider's services, and instead we will just use compute power for them from them. Many of the organizations or many of the professionals many times dictate this principle, saying that we will just go ahead and take compute from the cloud provider, which means we will take VMs or we will take containers. That's all we will take. After that, all the other tooling above that, we will go ahead and deploy our own. Okay, or we will use something which is totally independent of that particular cloud provider, that sort of thing. So you have to, if you really go and dig deeper, yes, there are many studies available where for some of the third party softwares which you go ahead and use, right, that actually cost you a lot. And when the same type of facility or same type of feature becomes available from your cloud provider, and you go ahead and try to compare that would cost you a lot lesser. So look at all those aspects, do a comparison, and then go ahead and decide that what should be your application architecture and what components you should use within your application. I hope that discussion made some sense and you would have got some thoughts based on this. Feel free to write in the comments below what do you think about this, and what has your experience been in this area. And yeah, if there are any questions, please let me know and we will try to discuss further on that. uh, we'll meet again in the next video. I hope you continue to watch and explore and think about the ways to do things better. See you everyone. Bye bye.